holidays to you all. My name is Barbara Howard. I will be your host for this evening. On the behalf of B-HBrilliantMinds Project, Inc., I would like to welcome you all to the closing of the Juneteenth 2021. We decided this year to acknowledge and honor the ancestors who did not get the message that they were free until years later. This is why we chose our theme for this year's Stolen Message. We wanted to shed light on their journey tonight by having this fireside conversation with you, our guest panelists, and you, our guest audience. And thank you for being here. At this moment, I would like to introduce the organization that is hosting this event tonight. B-HBrilliantMinds Project, Inc. is a 501c nonprofit organization that embraces the minds of the future towards excellence. Our purpose is to give youth, teen, and young adults the tools they will need to reach their highest potential in life. Our mission: empower brilliant minds to take control of their own destiny. We take a holistic approach when hosting our workshops and events. There are 3 areas of balance that we focus on: financial literacy, health and wellness, and self-empowerment. You can learn more about us on our website, www.bhbrilliantminds.org. So please, we have prizes for you tonight when you're leaving also. So all the information is on the actual gifts. However, I would like to ask an elder if I can have permission to move forward. Not quite sure who's the elder in the room. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So what we're going to do is just give thanks. Oh God, we thank you for this opportunity to come to you this evening. We thank you for being the Most High God and knowing that you have our backs and that you will continue to guide us through purpose. And I would like to thank my personal Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, myself, for me being here today. So what we will do is open up with a libation. We'll pour libation for our ancestors. I had to. That's fine. Thank you. So I would like for us to honor the ancestors that came before us. And once I pour honoring their names, we would like for you to say Ashe or Amen, whatever you prefer to do. So what we're going to do is honor the ancestors that came over in the slave ships and decided to jump ship because they were not willing to be on the ship. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Ashe. Ashe. Along with that, we want to thank the generations that have the brilliant minds to think about us being in these positions that we are in today and to continue to honor them. Ashe. Now, what I would like for us to do is honor your angels, the ones that transitioned over to our ancestor side. If you could throw their names out, just throw their names in the air. And what I will do, as we're sharing their names in my pour libation, and we'll say Amen and Ashe. I would say Mr. Howard and Mrs. Ernestine Howard. Ashe. So your folks out there. Mukari. Ashe. 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 Don't be shy. Ashe. 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 Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth. Ashe. Frederick Douglass. Ashe. James Pearson. Ashe. James Baldwin. Ashe. Jackie Robinson. Ashe. Who was that? Nat Turner. Ashe. Oh, Muhammad Ali. Ashe. So we know we have a lot of ancestors that we're standing on their backs, and that's what this day is about. Us remembering. As we're moving into the new year, it's for us to remember who we're standing on and who we are representing. And I will say to you today, yesterday, I had a little hard time. I was remembering my father and my mother. They transitioned over, and I was praying to them, and I was just acknowledging them and saying, I hope that I'm doing you good. I hope that I am representing the legacy. I hope that I am continuously doing the work you called me to do and that you asked me to do for our community. So I want to share that with you today, that I don't take it lightly to come before you. I don't take it lightly the things that we have to do for our ancestors, for our people. It is important. My father didn't play that. We have to honor our ancestors, and we have to honor our community, and we have to make sure we showed up. So this is what we're doing tonight, and we're grateful that you are here. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do this tonight. So, with that, I want to thank you, and I'm going to have Miss Samantha come up, and she's going to introduce our panelists. Give her a hand. Give yourselves a hand. Give yourselves a hand. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, love.
Good evening. So we are going to welcome our panelists in. We want to know who we have before us, and I'll start on my right hand side.
Or no, wait.
Ayanna.
Yes.
Can we just give Ayanna a wave?
Hey y'all.
So Ayanna's bio goes as follows. Ayanna Anderson is a transformational leader with more than 20 years of experience driving innovation, multi-channel, award-winning community engagement and PR campaigns for clients in healthcare, technology, higher education, and the nonprofit arena. In December 2020, she became the first head of diversity inclusion. The first, all right? Give me a hand for that. Of diversity, inclusion, and belonging for IWAR PR. In this role, she brings a lens of intersectionality and equity to the mission of eradicating the representation gaps in the industry and onboarding more diverse storytellers and creatives. Ayanna also proudly serves as an adjunct ethnic studies professor at Laney College in Oakland, California, where she teaches courses in African American history, film, gender studies, and more. She grew up on the south side of Chicago during the height of the Black Power era in the 1970s and believes with all of her heart that Black is beautiful. Next we have Michael Harris. Can we give a wave to Michael Harris? Michael Harris is a native of Sacramento, California, born at McLennan ABF Hospital, a U.S. Army veteran who served at Letterman Hospital, San Francisco Presidio, and poised to become commander at, should I say that acronym, NAVVEX? Yes. Gold River chapters in 2022. Today he serves as the chair, California Black Agriculture Working Group, a global multidisciplinary collaborative providing tangible action plans to increase the number and full participation of urban, rural, and global agriculture producers of African descent throughout all aspects of the $333 billion annual California working landscape and beyond. That's for over 15 years, Mr. Harris served as Development Director, California Black Farmers and Agriculturalists Association, And for 5 years, he served as a member of the USDA Community-Based Organization Partners team while representing education and advocacy between 2004 to 2008 as the Urban Agriculture Representation on the Food and Farm Policy Diversity Initiative team. Successful outcomes lead to urban agriculture being officially established, opening a path forward towards equity and inclusion, leading up to the creation of data collection in the 2008 Food and Energy Act. Today, the Office of Urban Agriculture is part of the USDA headquarters in Washington, D.C., with strategic plans for the next generation, 18 to 35, new and beginning farmers and ranchers. Give a hand for it. And last but not least, we have Kristel Johnson. Let's give her a student of life, parent of two, an educator for over 30 years, she has always celebrated learning. As a teacher, she mastered her subject matter and engaged in communicating the American story, provided in assigned textbooks and resources. While she questioned, she compiled with state and board requirements. It would be years later when she was faced with a racially motivated challenge that enabled her to seek comfort through the stories and history of our African ancestors. What began with a single discovery about Pitt's school quickly multiplied into a series of unplanned fabric squares that she later constructed into a quilt. And there it is. And if you see a lot of piece of her art, the more she knew, the more she wanted to know. From the original intent of personal curiosity, through a shared interest in viewing and discussing the often untold events of the African American experience and the phenomenal courage, conviction, and tenacity our ancestors displayed in their quest for equality. So let's give a hand for all of them.
So these are my personal friends. So I'm so grateful that they are in my life. Give them a hand again. So we're going to get started. What we're going to do, we keeping this home style. This is what we do. This is what we do. At the kitchen table, after you finish eating, you have a conversation. And that's what we have tonight. So before we get started, we're going to have Samantha. She's a spoken word artist that's phenomenal. And we're going to give her a hand. She's going to open us up with a spoken word piece. And then we're going to hand it over to the panelists. And they're going to get our conversations going. Fireside, because we're going to go deep. You know me, I don't mind being silly when it's time to, but when it's time to be professional, I know how to be professional. But I know how to lay my hair down when it's that time to have some fun. So tonight we're going to have some fun. We in there amongst family. So please keep your shoes on. If you want to, you already ate. If you want smoke, get smoke. But right here we go. All right, you're ready.
Even after reading their bios, I'm just seeing how everything is interconnected, right? We talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, affirmative action, all that's happening that derives from where we come from. And you talk about the future of food, right? So genetically modified foods, all that's happening from farming, and then quilting, art, our ancestry. So I know the conversation is already going to be so rich. The piece I'm going to share with you was actually a piece I wrote when I was 18. And now I'm 32. But I say that because I had a friend who asked me, we were both writers, and we were just choosing topics. And my family's from Ghana, West Africa. And she said, why don't you just write about being African? Like, I never hear you talk about that. And I was just like, okay, why does that even matter? Like, why is that something I really want to think about? But as I began to deeply, really go into the piece, it was a lot to take apart. It was a lot to meddle over. And it is a piece that has become dear to me, but also reminds me of not just who I am, but where I've come from, too. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. So, excuse me. The piece goes like this. I deep of a question, too coarse of a course, so of course at times I'm in denial. For while I was taught to cross my fingers, my father was taught to cross the Nile, worried about my rep while he wrestled reptiles, plastering pride, leaving no room for disaster. Yet I can still hear the ethnocentric laughter, dirty skin tinted darky booty scratcher, wishing to have scratched another lottery ticket, ticked off for like ticks or sucking their teeth out of my ligaments, disgraced at my lineage, for nowhere was I lucky. Age 5, I dream of trading places with my pink eyes. I wouldn't have to be what they called ugly, nasty, nappy, hair from the naps I've taken, nights I spent up asking God for another basin, too hard to face when you are your own shade. A complexion never lenient, only convenient for parades, 1 month holidays, 28 days to 28 days, and I am not bleeding. They impregnated my psyche, side effects of bleaching till I look like I belong in a cemetery. February, Webuary, I am tangled. I sing the star bangles, but the closest I get are these bangles made in Bangladesh. I once believed I was made in China, but that was all that borders my flesh. Forehead to feet, knees to neck, never dared to deliberately devolve and dress in a descriptive dashiki. But can sport a young Rocky may die and rocket on my pinky. Photos, but have not fortified the fortress of my identity. Fully fatuous, I fashion the French's finest flimsy. Disregarding, I derived from a costly continent. More than just a moronic woman, but a moving monument. Unable to assimilate, so don't try and stick me in like a societal syringe. I am a solid figure, hugging my horizons, just like my pyramids, piercing its physique with the sun, perplexed about my pulsating palms. They've stolen my percussion, but in the mix of thieving my sticks, they forgot I still got my eardrum vibrating, every vein vowing to never go visionless. Substituting skeptic state of minds with stirring spirits, a song seated at the throne of one suffering, staring at a reality within, pushing past personal pigment, leaving my brain to be belligerent, proudly proclaiming, I am African. Thank you.
Again, this is about the stolen message.
Is it? Okay,
Yes,
okay, right? I think we're good.
It's got an opening number. I'm not sure what it's probably. Oh, maybe this is cool. I don't know.
Is this better?
Yes.
A little bit better? Wow. Sister, that's so powerful. What do I say on the heels of that? Well, first of all, I just want to thank everyone for showing up, and I especially want to thank Barbara, my student, who I've been working with in different capacities, first at Lady College platform, and then in the community over the years. And, you know, I know this is the year that Juneteenth is officially a holiday. B-HBrilliantMinds, Barbara has been at the vanguard of making sure that there are events and conversations happening throughout the Bay Area. So give it up for her for being that advocate and that champion for me. You know, and I love holidays, right? So it's so fitting that we are talking about this critical holiday during the holiday season.
All right.
And, you know, when I think about Juneteenth, I think about our collective joy in many respects. I think about what it means for the whole country to have this public acknowledgement of what it means for our ancestors, those who were emancipated from chattel slavery. We have joy, but it's complicated if you think about it. Did anybody else have a struggle with it a little bit? Because it's like, yes, this is a great acknowledgement, but there's a whole lot of people who are going to be having a day off of work on their heels and on the backs of people who worked and toiled for 400 years. So it's complicated, right? And I think about, when I really think about that day, the 250,000 ancestors in Galveston, Texas, and that momentous occasion when the Union General Gordon Grange came and inform these folks of their freedom, informing them that the Civil War had ended, and that Emancipation Proclamation was real. I just think about how did they grapple with that news, knowing that there were 3 million other black folks who've been freed for almost 2 more years before they had been. I think about how these oppressors, these Texas planters, deliberately kept these ancestors in the dark, kept them in bondage. We're talking about a stolen memory, right? Stolen information. And why? All with the selfish hope of yielding 1 or 2 more harvests from their human property. And so, if we think about it, denying access to knowledge is a hallmark of chattel slavery and white supremacy. I'm gonna say that again.
All right, keep it real.
Denying access to knowledge is a hallmark of chattel slavery and white supremacy. I mean, and this was by design, right? We know that enslaved Africans were prohibited from reading and writing, right? And I refer to an article that I love so much in The Atlantic, and author Kelly Carter Jackson wrote, "Hiding history has always been about maintaining control, denying concession, and delaying justice."
Yeah.
Think about that. So here we are in 2021, and we have this confluence of events that reveal the complexity of white supremacy and history and memory. The whole year starts out with the storming of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
Watch it.
An unprecedented event that lays bare the legacy of racial hatred, and that this complex and destructive feeling has been the core of U.S. history. And if you think about it, what had been happening in the months preceding January 6th? Blackness was on full display for the world. And there was a rallying cry about blackness, which is antithetical to white supremacy. And we know that 2020 sparked a long overdue racial reckoning spurred by the murder of George Floyd. And so we're appalled, we're aghast right during last January. Like, really? Is this really happening? Is this what's happening after the, Black Lives Matter protests in the summer and everything else, all this knowledge, all this wokeness, all this allyship, all this solidarity, and then all the heels of that January 6th, we're seeing folks hanging nooses at the Capitol.
Yeah.
So, 6 months after that, Juneteenth is officially named as a holiday by President Biden. And for the context of this, Juneteenth really, for I think a large majority of non-black folks, really came into the picture in that summer of 2020. For a lot of people, they had never heard of it, they were unaware of it, and so there was this whole awakening around it. And 1 year later, we had our holiday. And for context, I looked it up. It took us 15 years to get a holiday for Dr. Martin Luther King. 15 years and a song by Stevie Wonder to get the holiday passed.
Watch yourself.
So, we have this beacon of freedom, this beacon of awareness, but at the same time, what else has happened in 2021? We have this dramatic pushback. You see the term critical race theory being applied to literally anything that tells the truth about white supremacy, about racism. It's being vilified, right?
Yeah.
You see situations where scholars like Nicole Hannah-Jones, who amplified the 1619 experience through her podcast and through her many outlets and platforms, being denied tenure by the University of North Carolina because of her problematic approach to history. So, like our Indigenous brothers and sisters, Black folks continue to be fighting against erasure, a stolen memory of what really happened. So, for me, this is all very instructive, and I'm happy to be here to unpack this and to dig into this. So I'll pass the mic to my brother to my left.
22 of those in administration, 7 in teaching. I retired in 2019. Oh, I'm sorry. I retired in 2019 as director in Santa Clara County, where I had oversight over 23 schools. And it didn't matter what capacity I served in my career in education, the problem is still the same. The absence of who we are in the textbooks, the trepidation of the teachers and administrators who even mention race, and just ignoring the minimization of it during certainly the only time they would bring it up would be Martin Luther King Rosa Parks, and now we get study of Malcolm X, that it would be a void, a big void in the communication of who we are. And yet, year after year, you would hear this uproar about test scores. What are we going to do for those kids that are performing low? And they look like us, black and brown people. It was no big secret to me. We were not connected to our history. We did not enthusiastically embrace conversations where we were void. And I can say this, having gone through the school system at a time post-civil rights movement, that we went to a predominantly white school. Of course, it had nothing to do with it. They didn't want anything to talk about race. And I was very limited in my school. And as my introduction said, that it wasn't until I, in the capacity of administrator, faced unimaginable racist practices in a climate, and I say educational climate, that tolerated it. And did not want to see a person like me as an administrator giving direction, and correction, and leadership, and the void of knowledge for the kids we were serving. And I work with incarcerated youth, work with high school dropouts, I work with gay students, which is supposed to be the elite group. They were the most challenging group because they were so fixed on regurgitating facts that had no critical thinking skills, not critical race theory, critical thinking skills about why did that happen. So they were regurgitating whatever they learned, whatever they were told without questioning. Some simple things, and I'll just share this one thing. When I first began teaching, I had this activity with kids, because they came in, they were just so proud of themselves of what they knew and how they were going to educate everybody about how smart they were. I did this thing called perspective, and I had them, it's called luggage. I had 2 kids in the classroom get in front of the classroom and act out a scene. The other kids were reporters in the classroom. And each one of the reporters had to write down an exciting newspaper article. This is getting to the whole history, reporting history. And the 2 kids acted it out. And I said, well, each one of you are reporters. You're writing to sell a newspaper. Some of you have money. Some of you have connections. Some of you have goodwill. Some of you have money, connections, and goodwill. And then after they wrote the story, because they were so committed to being right, that I said, no, you're not going to be reading it as we go through this. We're going to switch it up. And they had to move them over to children's deep. And then when they started reading the stories that they did write, I said, how was it we're all sitting in the same room? We all saw the same thing. But we have 3 different versions of what we saw. So these same kids that were little robots, regurgitating facts, could not provide a clear answer for them. So you can't provide an answer because your beliefs, what you've seen and observed, what you've been taught, all of this makes up how you perceive the world. And if you have a limited scope and a negative scope, how can you possibly engage in a very unbiased way with another individual? So it was an awakening for them. It was one of my most exciting activities at the beginning of the year because you should have seen these kids. They would tell me the depth of the ice full cap, and they were so proud of themselves. So when you challenge them to think beyond the boundaries of the textbook, which we all live. We all live in that space. And challenge them to think, don't just believe what people tell you, ask rationale behind it. Because the person that had the money, the person that had the connections, could say whatever they wanted to, and everybody was reading that newspaper. And that other person that may have seen a more authentic account, having a balanced perspective, seeing a multitude of experiences, had a different perspective. But I said, and that's how history was written. The person with the money, with the power, with the influence, got the privilege of writing down what they wanted to say. And they didn't want to write down unfavorable things about themselves or what they saw. They had a perspective that they were operating from. So it saddens me that some of the conversations I had going into education 30 years was the same conversation I had as I concluded. But what I did learn, in working with this multitude of diverse populations, is that we need to empower ourselves.
That's right.
And we can't wait. We can't wait for the by and by. They know it's been unfair. You can go to any board meeting, and they'll be all upset about the test scores, and check on it 3 months later. And not only check on it 3 months later, but they'll be giving what I see are punitive responses to it. You don't get an elective anymore. You have to come after school. You might have to get summer school. Oh yeah, I'm really excited now. So those strategies they use over and over again. And we know people tell us if you make a cake, you use the same recipe. Guess what, you get the same cake. So that's what they've been doing. But it's not until we change. We're very powerful. We don't know it. We go to board meetings and recite resolutions that they so proudly declare. Recite those elements in that resolution. Hold them accountable for the measurements that they need to have. That's our tax dollars. We're invisible. And we need to be very prominent. And we need to be very strategic. So the books I do, this is one of a series of 5 on slavery. I did this as one of my COVID projects at home. And I started this several years ago, and the topic was so difficult. The topic was agonizing when they got started. And I kept thinking about what the color scheme is, because before I begin a project, I try to figure out what colors I'm going to use. And I kept thinking of dreadful colors, and I said, I'm not going to squash the spirit of my ancestors. I'm going to celebrate them. And amid the hardships that they lived, I want the vibrant colors. That's why you see these people with different arrays of colors. A proud people, a diverse people, a stolen. And so I really appreciated the opportunity to come today. I'm very budget, so I'm going to get a jumping part. But I get really excited about it because it generates a conversation with kids, with adults, with educators. And I've had people come up to me. I have one series called Black Mindset. But one of the guys who came up to me, he was so fixed on Black Lives Matter in such a negative way. He walks in, he says, all lives matter. And I just kind of looked at him, and I looked away. Then he said it again, all lives matter, with the more aggressive tone. I said, why is it the affirmation of our value causes you to generate such hatred? Watch yourself. You are struggling. It's not that the issue is not that we don't matter. The issue is that we don't think we should. So your issue is not going to be my issue. I'm moving forward. We as a people have got to do the work. We have got to know our own history. This was my personal journey. And I said I was going to do 3. I am now close to 50. Every time I say I'm done, I put it up, that's the floor all the yard is. I'm not going to take this back out anymore. I buy some more fabric, and here we go. So I just say that one of the things I'm very passionate about is having a voice in education, knowing that we're very powerful in that. You're going to rally for it. If you do the reading, you look at the resolution, and you ask them a simple question. When they have the monies for LCAP, where is that going to bring up the test scores? How are you measuring it? How is it being publicized? Who's involved? Because they will say it proudly in the fall, but you won't hear about it. So that's my little stolen people, stolen history, we need to claim.
All right.
So yeah, I'm not sure what I want to do, but the thing that is a blessing is to sit here between these 2 powerful sisters. So I thank y'all in advance for listening to what I have to say, and know that I am y'all crazy uncle in the attic. They don't, I'm all because I tear stuff up in front.
Yes, he does. At the state capitol.
So yeah, I was on the National Juneteenth board, right? And I got to the point where I knew I had to get off the board because I was cussing at elders and ancestors. And I knew something bad was going to happen to me if I stayed in these circles doing this. But there's a sister named Lula Briggs who was here, San Jose, Juneteenth lineage. She dead gone. She went 25 years pushing to get Juneteenth. Dr. Myers, amazing brother who was a doctor in Milwaukee, and then he moved to the bush, Mississippi, in the middle of nowhere because the farmers didn't have no doctors, didn't have no money to pay.
Wow.
And then so all he did was spend all his dimes trying to get Juneteenth into a holiday. He died 2 years ago. Now Juneteenth is a holiday. What they did, they had me cussing at folks and like acting crazy. They changed the National Juneteenth Freedom Day celebration to Juneteenth Independence Day. I was cussing at them. Like, well, ain't nobody enslaved and changed talking about we want to be independent. Master. I'd like to be independent. So the sister said, I am African. So how did we get here? We were prisoners of war. Thrown in the bottom of a ship, enslaved. Some people say 1619 because, you know, they're getting happy. No. The Pope said 1442, go down to Africa and get them. Them Africans might get in the middle of this war with the Muslims. It was a papal edict. Let me calm down.
You amongst family.
I told the sisters at the door I was going to act right.
Get you some background.
So let me put the question. So here in California, the state of California is named after an African woman, Queen Calafia. And some of y'all might be Muslims. Anybody here Muslim? Ain't no Muslims in here. One Muslim. So Caliph is a feminine aspect of, you know, the ruler. So why is it strange to say there's a black woman on the throne? There's one right for Oakland in the White House. This ain't nothing new, especially if we're talking about I'm an African. Yaya Asante one. She said, brothers got tired, I'm gonna fight. Hey, down these people. There's a sister that used to work right across the street, about a block away from here. The first time a woman, and I'm pausing, I didn't say a black woman, I said a woman wrote for a daily newspaper. And she ran all down the state, documenting the history of people of African descent here in California. Her name was, anybody know her name? She worked 2 blocks away from here, died about 100 years ago. Delilah Beasley. What's her name? Delilah Beasley. Yes. So she wrote about slavery in California, and she talked to people that were actually enslaved here in California. Wow. And wrote it in a book. So when they say there was no slavery in California, I'm like, well, okay, why would you say a fugitive slave act in the state legislature? Seems to be. So, I'll say 2 things, and then we're going to have a conversation. 2 more things. So, I'm so glad the sisters from Ghana. Oh my God. So, the city of Oakland is sister cities with Sedona's top product. Now, y'all know what that means? That's like 30 years ago, folks said, hey, look, we need to be talking with the people where we probably came from. You know, them dungeons, those churches in the middle of a holding tank before you was put on the door of no return. And then, you know, back in 76, man started talking about roots, and most people still don't know their roots. Won't do the DNA. It's easy now. All you got to do is give a little blood. They tell you where you're from. Or saliva test, yeah. And so the trade and commerce around agriculture, you know, black don't crack here because you bathe in shea butter. You ain't gonna crack. You eat healthy food. This is collard green meat. You eat some collard greens and drink liquor, pot liquor, not no like spirits. The brother back here from North Carolina selling wine. You say you believe in God, drink some Jesus wine. You know, baptize yourself, eat good food. You say dress and keep the garden, that's your job. We ain't got no garden master. So we have had some very difficult times, enslaved, afflicted, and now it's over the 400-year curse. They curse. It's over. The question is, and this is the vanguard, as I looked at those Black Panther posters in the back. The power to the people. Do we believe it? Let's have this conversation.
All right. So, I understand that when you're talking real talk and you're going deep, a lot of people don't want to attend, or it's on the surface. But we are about keeping it real and going deep. Because if we don't go deep, if we don't keep it real, we're going to continue to lose our children here out in the streets. So it is B-HBrilliantMinds Project Inc. responsibility to make sure that we at least share with our community our history. It is so important for us. So right now we're just going to
Well, I don't know the exact history of that, but I do know that some free blacks owned slaves. So it would not surprise me if we were enslaved by indigenous brothers and sisters, but at the same time, I think everything about that aspect of our history was problematic. And just like we could enslave each other, and we have to have that grace and forgiveness. I also think what we know for sure is that many indigenous communities embraced us. We became a part of the community, maroon communities. That's not just here, but that's throughout the African diaspora. So there is this interconnectedness, I think. But I think it's complicated. You know, just like it's complicated now, and we have black on black crime, and we have issues in our community, and it's like we're turning on each other, and it's like we love each other, but what's really happening? The second part of your question, I'm sorry.
The second part was
The voting.
the
The voting issue is for me, it's a
Juneteenth versus.
correct.
No.
Well, this is what has happened historically. If you look at the history, and Juneteenth even is a good example of that, where on the heels of Emancipation Proclamation, then you have all this legislation. Of course, that's when the conversations were bubbling up about reparations and our 40 acres and a mule and all of these provisions that were supposed to happen. And we all know what happened with that. And then we know what happened with this Reconstruction era and black codes and all these other things that continue to perpetuate these systemic inequities. And so if you just look at the history, if you look at, 2 steps forward and then the reaction, and then we take some steps back, I do believe that is what's happening right now. And it's scary and wide-reaching, because not only am I concerned, of course, with what's happening in voting, but as a woman, I'm also concerned with my reproductive rights within the same year. So I just think we're in a really scary time. And again, like we had Obama for 2 terms, and then we had the Trump era. Like this is just been part and parcel of history. This is just the way it goes. And so that then becomes a question for us about, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to take it back, right? I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, real quick, Jillian Heath-Shaw is the sister's name. She's writing about this right now. There were 5 tribes that actually owned tribes that owned enslaved people of African descent. And they were called the Civilized Tribe because they partnered with the Confederates and they owned slaves. There's nobody else in history that we know of, whole tribes, owned any enslaved Africans. And oddly enough, they're in Oklahoma, which was not part of the United States at the time of the territory. And they moved, people, Trail of Tears and Sorrow.
Yes.
It wasn't just native indigenous people that they later called Indians, but people that were on the land. And a lot of them were people, very dark-skinned people. There's some people back here in the back that's from Louisiana. They black as the ace of spades. They from Africa. They the indigenous people, the mountains of the Washita. And they owned slaves because they had to buy people out of slavery because they didn't have enough people to fight, so they just paid them. and they say they own slaves, but it wasn't a tribal decision to own slaves. It was just a convenient way to get mama back. It was just divide them. So,
We've done a lot of research on my maternal side, and we're very much aware of the Trail of Tears. My grandmother told a story when we were younger about the Trail of Tears, and in the sense that one of our relatives was free and they were captive, but we traveled with the Native Americans, and that's why we have so many people that are from Oklahoma. So you talk to a lot of black folks from Oklahoma, whatever. In terms of them owning us, I've read various versions of it, that we were often traded when the black colonists were trying to learn things or whatever. They gave us slaves and they owned us, just like the whites did, but they treated us differently than the whites because they saw how unmerciful whites were. But again, there are different versions of that account.
Yeah.
So I can't say with absolute certainty, but I can say that from my genealogy, we have Chickasaw in our family tree. So we know part of that comes from our family history on my maternal side. As far as the holiday goes, I got mixed feelings, strong mixed feelings about it, because how can you give us a holiday but you don't want to talk about our history? So you give us a holiday where everybody can barbecue or whatever, but you don't talk about it.
Yes.
So it's a total contradiction. So on the heels of saying, yes, we're going to honor this, and that was because Trump messed it up by trying to have rallies and that's what we acting like there was no heartfelt movement for it. And so by him messing it up, well, we got to do something. And they did. But I don't think there was anything that was moving about, wow, let's really look into this. They're striking everything out, double time striking stuff out of the textbooks and conversations and texts. It's been doing everything they can. Certainly anyone would be talking about it. So that's just not.
Wondering, do you have a strategy or something you could support so that the conversation could happen in schools?
let me take a crack at that, because as I said earlier, I was on the national board. They still have me as the regional director, even though I don't fool with the people right now, because I got nothing nice to say about it. But here in California, this is it. This room is it. You know, for, let's say, 10 years, I've been doing Juneteenth at the state capitol. Last year, it was like 100 degrees, we was out there. And the legislation, they're waiting for suggested language for the legislation for the state of California. Last year, Santa Clara County was the only county where it was a paid holiday for the employees in Santa Clara. And that was done because, white guys push it through, and now he's a senator down there. Can't think of his name right now. But what it looks like here in California is on us. There's no legislation in Harvard. And we were there with the chair of the lead consultant for the Legislative Black Caucus. It's not a priority to them. So talking personally with Senator Skinner, I'm going to ask her to carry the legislation for California Juneteenth holiday. And we were working with the unions, who really is the challenge, and Yvonne Walker, it just didn't occur to me that she would get voted out, but she did. So it's really an issue about the unions. Governor Newsom, he said not yet. That's what he said. Last year there was a surplus, a projected $30 billion surplus. So the money is there to make it a holiday for the state employees. And also in each city, from city to city, you got to go city to city because collective bargaining units happen in the city. So it's not what they want to do. It's the lack of us doing anything. We haven't come together as a collective. Oakland's doing one thing, Sacramento's doing one thing, LA is doing one thing, and the folks that were and are leading it, they capitulated and had a notion of Independence Day. So how do you teach Independence Day on Juneteenth in an educational curriculum? And I'll leave it at this, because as a veteran, it disturbs me greatly that black folks in general don't want to even deal with the fact that we were prisoners of war to begin slavery. We don't talk about slavery at Juneteenth, and then we don't talk about how we got free, which was on the battlefield as U.S. colored troops and going plantation to plantation freeing people. That is how you got free. Somebody with a uniform that looked like you came to your plantation and told you was free. And it wasn't just Texas. It was right here in California. All over the lifestyle. Even in so-called free northern states, people were in chains. And if you read the 13th Amendment, it said you're still a slave if you convicted of a crime. Right now tonight, slavery is legal in America, according to the Constitution, if you have been convicted of a crime. So we as people, and I'm saying the broader sense, in this room, I mean, you're going to have some, like 4 or 5 of us. It was about 8 of us that was in the lead consultant's office on Juneteenth. And they're at, well, where's the Juneteenth flag? They're like, we don't have one. We got the American flag. It's not a holiday here. So they put the red, black, and green up at our state capitol. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to us. And we, at some point, have to say this is what we want, and have enough sense to have a lobbyist to walk door to door and get each one of them to sign off on it, and then they sign off on it and it becomes a law. That's how it works. Now, until we do that, it ain't gonna happen.
I'd like to comment on the question. One of the things I think is most powerful is getting education, you know what I have to remember. I'm trying to talk about this now. As a parent that makes the biggest uproar about their little child getting special privileges for taking the test. There's a child that everybody knows about. And we need to take some of that same strategy when you're talking about what is the resolution that every district has, every county office has a resolution regarding some measure of diversity, inclusion, and so forth. You should look at what that mission is, what that resolution is, and then look at the measurements. The same way they break down and super analyze everything else, they should be able to analyze it. And when I give reference to LCAT, follow the money. Right. They have money and resources set aside that they say they're so concerned about how our kids are feeling. But you need to follow the money. Find out what it is, get a small group of people, start off small. Ask those questions, meet with the superintendent, go over what it is, schedule time to go to a board meeting, and ask those very questions. And where is the commitment that follows the language that is written in the resolution? What are the benchmarks you're looking at? How are you holding people accountable? Because without accountability, it's just a good idea. And so, those things, it's a strategic plan. In my opinion, having worked in these various capacities, I see how they work it out. When they started charter schools, they knew what they were going to do to set up the charter school. I would say that I don't think the charter school needs to take place, but they knew how to do it because they got their data together, they spoke the language. When I say speaking the language, this is what you did. You're going to dismiss me, but this is your resolution saying that every child will meet this goal by this. We're putting funding in towards that for every school. Every school has to report back to the board. And when that happens, you can sit up there at the meeting, have that group of people there at the meeting, challenging those communication. And when you do that, there's a level of awareness and discomfort that comes with, we're going to smooth it over because we're trying. Like I said in the fall, angry about the test scores, but as the year goes by, we've got other things to think about, and that brings us to focus. But I think we lose sight of our individual power. That one voice can make a difference. One person can break that pattern, because the status quo works for many at the cost of people of color. So we have to change the narrative, and it only comes. And that was part of my frustration when I decided that it was time for me to retire. Because in my capacity, I had filters on for everything. I'm filter free now. So it is a lovely place to be.
Yes.
And they got scared of me towards the end because I took them down 15%, watch yourself. Because I was going to say anything I wanted to say. The truth of the matter is, it's all about the money. It's about the money. So when our kids do bad in school, their kids do it. So they need to be on the max of kids, not performing in order to get the kids in the Ivy League schools. So it's a working system. Right now, we don't stand up and show our knowledge. Go in there in an organized, strategic manner. Speak their language. That's how I do.
Well, and just to offer some encouragement, I work for a communications agency that partners with tech companies, and so I'm sort of tech world adjacent. And what encourages me is that, again, I got into my role in 2020, and so the whole host of other folks who are now leading these diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging conversations. And there is a heightened commitment to accountability. And now, for all these big Twitter, Salesforce, Facebook, LinkedIn, all these big players, and these are the power centers and the money centers, to get all of these commitments They did all these statements about how they were going to invest in different businesses, BIPOC, entities, black-owned, black-led, and folks are asking those hard questions. And beyond, I think, the critical lens of accountability, what encourages me in my role is I'm seeing, thank you, that young people, Gen Z in the house, millennials in the house, they have a different expectation. And they are very bold and forthright about the kind of world and purpose-led and equitable world, whether it's the climate, whether it's racism, whether it's gender politics, that they want to inherit. And these young workers are making noise. They are unapologetic, and if they feel like these are toxic environments, they're walking out the door. That's a whole part of this great resignation that you're seeing because people have had a shift. The pandemic has been really instructive for a lot of people about what their values are and how they want to spend their time and who they want to spend their time with. And the browning of America is inevitable. And we have to lean into that and just know that January 6th is just really, a byproduct of a shrinking white hegemonic system. It's going away. And so you see these grandstanding efforts being made because the browning of America, the global majority of black and brown people, is in full effect. So I think be encouraged, accountability, I see more than ever. But to my panelist point, the work does not stop as far as leading those conversations at home. And as an ethnic studies teacher at Lane College, I can't tell you over the past decade how many students I've had who come into my class and they're like, I've never heard any of this. And they're here in the Bay. They're going to school in Berkeley. They're like, I never knew anything about this. And you think like we are here literally in the hub of power to the people, Black Lives Matter, Black Panthers, Angela Davis, just all of this, like the Black intelligentsia. That's why I came to the Bay Area from the south side of Chicago. And it's startling to me that I have the amount of students who come through my door saying, we didn't get any of this education. So, that was a great question. I'll pass it back to you.
Anybody else have another question? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I can see what my sister here says. I don't see much change that's happening, especially in education areas. Like, because I have a non-profit organization which Barbara is part of it. We do a lot of work with African immigrants and African American community. Right now, we are advocating to open a house to buy house for homeless population. So anyhow, we also advocate for young people, but this lady last week, I was invited, I was called to talk to young 6-year-old child. He's African American. His father is African American, his mom is mixed African and African American. So in the school, that he goes, he's been kicked out to the school because leadership matters. So this kid, and then I went to the school, I discussed to the principal and then offered to the counselor. And then when we talked with him, and we decided the teacher, the grandmother, to sit with him in this class. So when she sit with him in the class, she saw a lot of stuff happening in the class because, the teacher is white, he cannot control the kids, and then it's a whole mess in that kid was kicked out from the school. So, what I'm saying is, I don't know, this is cutting off, but what strategy is in place? We need more black teachers, we need more black counselors. So the kid was counseled by, a white woman. She, doesn't understand what is happening because his mom is, disappeared. We don't know what his mom is. His grandma is taking care of him. He have a lot of pressure. There's a lot of issues with the, the kid. However, there is no system that can help the kid. There is no system that can help the mother. There is no black teacher that can even help this kid. And the white old teacher doesn't even have control of the class. So this has been like, 20th century. 20th century, we don't have any system that even works for our kids, works for us, works for our homeless population. So you guys are leaders right here, right now, and we following you. So is this a system or a structure built for that? That's what she's asking. But is this a system that you can guide us to advocate on the street? Is this a system that we can change this? Are we advocating for charter school that also, for only black people, black like black banks, black like black school, black like black businesses? Otherwise, there is no way out the way it is. You think slavery is over, but it's not over.
You know what, also what I would say to that is that they're leaders, but we're leaders too. So we have to be the ones to figure out a way ourselves and come up with a plan with the teachers in the school, with the parents in the school. Because I can say about African American people, about our history, about our people, we didn't wait for folks. Our problem is we're waiting for somebody else to do it. And we're waiting for us. We got the power to do it. So just like everybody in their own lane, doing their own thing, like us with B-HBrilliantMinds, I can't worry about what other people are doing or what they're not doing. I got to see it, and then I got to create it, and I have to make sure, like something like this, other things that I do. It's like I can't wait. I can't wait for other folks to do it. It's me. I'm the chosen one. We're the chosen one. We're the called for right now. Our ancestors are saying to us, but what I believe is, where are you? What are you doing? I passed the torch to you. How are you going to move us forward?
That's right.
What are you going to do before we leave out of this earth? And that's my charge. That's what I know. That's why I do it every day. That's why I do what I do. Because I hear them saying, Barbara, what are you going to do? I passed it to you. Now, you're the chosen people. You're the chosen one. I did all this for you. What are you going to do for the next generation? Go ahead, sis.
I was just going to say, for me, when we look at the example of Stacey Abrams and how Stacey Abrams is so intentional about, getting Georgia into the 2020 presidential election and on the heels of a very devastating defeat when she ran for governor. And I love what she said about, she sat Shiva, which is a Jewish tradition, and wore black for days, however many days, and she grieved, and then she was like, now it's time to kick into action. And that single-handedly, I believe, completely changed the outcome, importantly with those two Senate seats. But then, in addition to that, it was a great confirmation of what happens when you have a change agent, because there was this excitement. There was this, it just sort of catalyzed a lot of action, a lot of awareness. You would see these beautiful images of folks standing in these lines. It wasn't beautiful because they're standing in these long lines, and that was, of course, strategy so that it would, discourage folks. But, people use social media to talk about the kinds of things you need to have to be able to go out and vote. And I think that was just one example of what happens when you have a visionary and people buy into that vision, and they keep their eyes on the prize, as it were. And of course, she's running for governor again. And I think everyone who's concerned about our voting rights needs to be dialed into what can we be doing to help out Sister Stacey right now, knowing that she has some years before that happens. But we need to just be more on mission, right?
Yeah, and the beauty is, the United Nations has declared a permanent form for people of African descent. All of the Africa Union is one continent, right, in terms of free trade. We know that. What are we doing? We have one of the biggest ports right here. How much tonnage is going to Africa? And it's a sister city with Khubaka. Right here in Oakland, the decision was made to bring black agricultural businesses.
Wow.
It's a crime, in my mind, that a black man from Fresno had to come every Saturday to Oakland to sell fresh fruits and vegetables, as if people here can't grow their own food. But who's training them? And how so intentionally, the biggest farm organization in the state, I twisted arm, uncle, the Farm Bureau, and I got magazines over here and brochures, Bountiful. They're going to pay me to come up here and just organize folks. And so what we're going to do is through the farming is organize for a mayor that looked like us, that drums like me, that I just sat and listened to for 30 years. I'm talking about Bob Graveheart is running for mayor here in Oakland. Whether you like him or not, you might want to just organize and see if you don't like Greg, at least organize with Greg because he's an educator. And then maybe you go and then bring some energy to the school and deal with what you're doing at the community level. But the superintendent of public school instruction is from these parts. He's a black man, and Latino, speaks Spanish. He runs all the schools in California. He's from Alameda County. Call him. If you need help, call him. I'll be on the phone with you. I say,
Tony Thurman.
Tony? This is something got a problem right down the street from your house. What? Oh, I know you're in there, Tony. Hey, look. You think I'm playing? How you get in here? Y'all better do something. Seriously. That's what you have to do if you...
Accountability.
Look, I'm going to say this. So if you go, before you leave, go over there and listen to pictures in the back. The last time I was in this building was the brother who did, what can I call your name, Bob? Emory, who did all the people, the color, the newspapers. For self-defense. And the partner that was with him was the Minister of Culture from Sacramento, Bob Akonadi, who did the one who said kill the police, right? They don't want them to come to the Capitol again. I called them, they came. I said, they didn't bring guns this time. They got posted. They got one more good ass on the left and a don't let deal.
Right.
And that's what you have to. We can be nice, but we were in chains. Now the chains, are we spiritually free to be able to act and do our own behalf? And you can look every day and see this, it's not many.
I would like to say that as individuals, we can start one day at a time what we're doing. And I go back, I never intended to do quilts. I've never taken a quilting class in my life. I'm an educator who's using that as a medium. And it was pure accident that I started doing it. And by doing it and then seeing how people started asking questions and challenging me, it generated more conversations of people that were inquiring on their own. Going to this classroom that I had when I was director, I took off half the day. The teachers that were trying to do leaders who could not be white and young. And one of the teachers wanted me to come talk to their class. And there were 3 classrooms of 8th graders. And they had done some prep in terms of Black history. And she took this on because, of course, it's one of those optional things during Black history. You can do it, you don't have to do it when it's on. But she saw some value in it. All 3 of the teachers saw value in it. And they had me come. And the kids asked me very genuine questions about any questions. Sometimes they wouldn't get offensive to me, but I knew they were coming from a good place. The colored people say things that it was an indicator of what they did not have exposure to because they were pretty isolated in their community. But at the end of the activity, about 3 weeks after I had done the presentation, it was very appreciative. She had every student do a slide that reflected what they learned about African American history on that slide. Pictures of the books, about 10 in there, and then they wrote about what they didn't know, what they learned, and how it impacted their life, and how they started looking forward. And I never expect the vast majority of people to pick up on it. But if I get 1 or 2 people to start the conversation, like I'm a young person that started the conversation, that started doing something like this, one person can have an impact on so many individuals. And so I never say, we can't do anything to make a difference, and we can start every day. What am I doing? And sometimes it's just the attaboy, who was it? To a kid who's struggling because they're not going to hear it, they're not going to see themselves as a beautiful person in TV or whatever. It starts off with something that seems very insignificant when the problem is so massive. But if we can start attacking one person, and then it will have a negative effect.
When they were tearing down the village, guess who God said, you've been chosen to go and fight at the city of Oakland and the pork. Me, I was the youngest business owner, youngest person there out of all of the merchants there. It was me. And guess what? When we left there, what they wanted to give us, we got paid way more than that. Samuel Gallery, it was like 15 businesses. Me, I was the one that went and fought for all of those businesses down there.
Wow.
Every last one. It's rough. I was fighting John Russo. Remember when John Russo was in office? When John Russo was in office, I went in front of that council. I fought with them, and I fought with the Port of Oakland. I had Brother Omar Benjamin told me, Miss Howard, am I going to have to come out of this $800 suit and put some overalls on? I said, brother, you better change your clothes. Let's go. Because I am not going to allow you to let Samuel Gallery, that's been in business for over, I don't know how much money he done gave to this city, that you're going to give us with what? Walking out of the door for us to leave? No. Nancy Nadell, I had to sit down with her. I sat down with them, and I fought them, and we won. Me. God told me to do it. I'm like, what? What am I going to do? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a this. He said, I'm going to tell you what to do. You do this. And I guarantee you, one person amongst all of those members, I was the youngest one fighting for all of those businesses. And we made a difference.
That's right.
So I'm giving a testimony of what can be done when you get told and you give some marching artists. I'm like, okay, you want me to fight some more? My goodness, but okay. Y'all gave this to me. So I'm just telling you, one person can make a difference. We just got to come together and make it happen. It's hard. We're not saying this is going to happen overnight, but you got to get the right people together. And as you were saying, they are in office because we put them there. They are now sitting there as though they owe us or we owe them. No, we vote you in, we can vote you out.
That's right.
So, what was that? So, what was the next question? And we come into a close, and we do have some gifts for you too. But go ahead, brother.
My name is Anthony Hall. And I just want everybody to take a minute just to kind of look at the art on the wall. That's very beautiful. And it's, it's listed as abstract. And sometimes when we talk about planning, it's almost like how an abstract art is that everybody's seeing something different.
In terms of the Juneteenth legislation, they're waiting for suggested language. And there will be introduced suggested language for the bill. Again, it's real simple. It's a union conversation with the government.
It's a state, you're focusing state spot first.
The state legislature, every county, 58 of them, has to have resolution and then there's collective bargaining in each county. Every city. So if you want to get a city holiday here in the city of Oakland, you have to go to the city council here in Oakland. So we're going to do that here in Alameda County and the city of Oakland and a few other cities around here. The strategy is looking at the train line and doing the city on the train line. I spoke with the chair of the San Joaquin County Joint Powers Authority, Mr. Hume. I talked to him, just me and him one-on-one, and they're all on board with it, willing to do it. So now we have to give them language. And however you want to look at it, the language that we're like massaging is real broad and simple, but most people don't want to deal with Delilah Beasley. She wrote a piece called Slavery in California. Google it up. That's our primary source documentation that we're standing on. California is named after a black woman. That's our primary source documentation that we're dealing with. How many black women were captives here in California, and why are black women still getting 20% of what white women today, right now in 2021? So that's where we're starting. And some folks are crazy enough to go with me in the Capitol and kick the door in and be there. I mean, literally, you're on the steps of the Capitol and coming in. So at the state level, and then right down the street here is the city, and then Alameda County over there or someplace, we can do that this year. You're welcome to be a part of that team.
And I was just going to say, and I do think think the dinner time conversations are critical.
Yeah.
You know, I'm looking at this, at my two, this copy of Roots. And when I grew up, like I said, I'm a child of the 70s, and Roots was like a major epic event in my household, like, and every time it came back on, it was like required watching in my household. Like, it was like, I've already seen this, Daddy, it doesn't matter, you need to see it every time it comes on. And Eyes on the Prize, and all the Spike Lee movies, like, I mean, just all of the content, and of course back then it was just like, you know, we were so hungry for content because we didn't have content like we have content now. But I do think as an ethnic studies professor and as a mom, I would say you gotta do foundational work. You gotta have those dinner time conversations. My 13-year-old son just read Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl about Harriet Jacobs, and the teacher had a whole curriculum around slavery, and when he took a poll among the 7th graders, and said a predominantly African American school in Oakland, only 4 children had ever heard Roots in history. And I'm like, Roots is foundational. There's a new Roots, there's an old Roots, like if you want to have a new version, it's a new version.
The deep roots.
But I'm just like, you know, so, and not that that's the only way to talk about the experience, but it's an effective platform that I think most of us are familiar with. And so let's not discard what really helps, I think, a whole generation of folks get connected to ancestry and lineage. And, you know, let's not assume that Facebook and TikTok are going to be the teachers of our children. We need to still be having those dinner time conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For such a long time, we were a source of wealth for the world, right? And as we think about, almost thinking about this like a social, as a three-legged prong, like there's a social aspect that we need to talk about, there's an educational aspect of it where it's just like it needs to be passed on and everything, but then the economic aspect of it, a lot of the billionaires that we see, they've never gone to school, like this is just being passed down. So how can we, particularly as a community, do a better job of circulating, not just generating wealth, but then circulating wealth amongst each other?
I think this all ties back into history, because the African reparations, you know, why the African reparations. And the missing piece in this is that people don't even understand why it's generational wealth. That whites already have a jump start because we did the free labor. When they died, their parents gave them property or whatever. And so it still goes back to the historical context of it. Because what many other people are just hearing, why you get the money, if they don't know the context of why there's such a disparity between the incomes and the household and the living patterns, that they don't understand the GI Bill that was not extended to blacks. They don't understand redlining. They don't understand any of that because, again, it comes back to what is being taught. And if they don't have that context, it bristles because they go back to put yourself by your bootstraps. I did it, you should do it too. Never didn't happen. So not having that constructive information about the years of advantages that their generation afforded them. And I'm not saying woe is me, but I'm saying that's the reality. And so I don't think you get any fight out of people that have been victims of it. I think the fight out of those that don't feel that there's a victimization or that they've been benefactors because they don't know the reality.
Yeah, the reparations conversation is not new. In this community, if you really want to know about reparations, the 35-year struggle that Brother Jahahara Kebelan has been dealing with, part of in Cobra, that's been this constant, never-ending, every year fight. Talk to him. Me personally, I'm still fully vested in teaching Juneteenth from a holistic point of view and using the platform of agriculture to teach a broader conversation. And because if we go back and talk about where agriculture came from in Africa and the different ways that it is the foundation of different cultures and the basis of an economy, the wealth, the CD in Ghana is, you know, a cowrie shell, and that is where the money is, and now it's like electronically transferred through commodities.
And here in California, it's $333 billion, the industry. And when you say agriculture industry, I'm talking about the cotton panties you're wearing, the bras, the drawers brother got on, the food we ate, poinsettia. All this is agriculture, the mining of the coltan that goes into the turn. That's agriculture, it's the working landscape. We don't have no adult conversation about that. So Juneteenth is where we're going to, the brother back here, that's going to be the Juneteenth wine for California. That wine right there, melanated, even though it's from North Carolina. Well, I mean, but it's here, and it's, Joyce is part of it. It's a done deal. I get to say so because I said so, because that's the position I hold right now. But the idea of reparations, we can't get to Juneteenth, the milestone when we're legally free. The bill is AB 3121 that they're studying it right now to do all that academic gymnastics to get to the point where what actually happened. But they didn't, I mean, the day the bill was given a number, they didn't want to deal with slavery in California. And I'm talking to the staff member waiting for the bill number. And I'm like, what the hell are you going to do with that? You're not going to talk about slavery in California. How are you going to deal with reparations? You're not going to talk about slavery. Juneteenth is not a priority. So I don't have the bandwidth for that because, because I know the uncle is real crazy. I live in Sacramento. He used to go over there and kick the door in. Literally. But I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing in the Biden administration, the Executive Order 13985. Remember that one. And then this whole construct of Build Back Better, they're throwing, I mean, $2 trillion they're throwing around at people to build back better. So I suggest y'all be intentional, around these parts and not let them build back better in this own systemic institutional racism permeated with white male inferiority complex.
So for me, I just think reparations is really complicated, right? Like I think on the one hand, we still have the overarching issue of where can we be safe. So the lessons of Black Wall Street and Tulsa are enduring lessons. So even if we were to have access to reparations, would we be able to keep that wealth? Because we know that historically that there have been measures and attacks and all kinds of nefarious activities to strip us from our assets. So that is a concern. And in addition to that, I don't know that having reparations in and of itself solves as much as we think it does. And I'm only looking at the example of our indigenous brothers and sisters. And sure, yes, they have casinos all over the place. That's great. But if we look at the health conditions, if we look at the trauma, if we look at the alcoholism, if we look at the missing women, so I think reparations, I think it's critical. I think that as a community, we need to become more financially literate. I think we need to deal with our trauma around money and get really steeped in that. And then I also just think that, even if you get it, it can be problematic. I think it's complicated.
Oh, I can handle it though.
You work that out. Well, they let you keep it.
All right.
We need something reparations, right? Help the Jews get reparations through their own, even though they had nothing to do with it.
Everybody.
And sell us, right?
Everybody.
And then it was slave owners reparations.
100%.
So, I mean.
100%.
Yeah, Native Americans outlive us by 5 years in Alameda County. So they're doing comparatively better.
Right. Yeah, I feel y'all.
All right. Well, wow. It was heavy, but it was needed. Can we give our parents a hand? So I definitely want to thank Ms. Joyce for the gallery sitting over there. We love you, we appreciate you, and we thank God for you.
Can we do this again next week?
Yes, we can. Look, how many times you want me to do it? I'll get it done. But this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be having deep conversations. We've been doing this. So now this just the charge for what I hear is that it has to be done doing more. As a matter of fact, be on the lookout for Brother David Roach. He is the founder of the International Film Festival.
Yes.
He and I are going to be doing some work together. And they have a mobile screen. So we're going to be doing conversations like this and showing movies inside and outside. So we got this going for 2022 and moving forward. So we're excited about that. I definitely want to thank the B-HBrilliantMinds team. I also want to thank our funders, Akonadi Foundation, and then we have Windrose of the Counsel Foundation, and you. Yeah. So what we have for you to take home is that to honor, yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I wanted to say, if you're in Los Angeles and the Crenshaw Museum, in February, I'm going to have 20 quilts up for display. This is a small one, so it will be the whole area. So if you're up here in Los Angeles, check it out.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And then I also wanted to share with you, again, the reason why we, again, waited until to give out these special gifts. We did a Juneteenth 196. The Juneteenth 196 was to honor 2020. We couldn't do it physically, but however, we had interviews. We got like 50 interviews, so please check out the website. We have 50 interviews. These brothers and sisters are on there.
What's the website?
www.bhbrilliantminds.org. However, these are our special editions that we did for Juneteenth 196. So we held them for 2021 for that stolen message. So we're giving you these out. You have a t-shirt, you have a wristband, and you also have these totes. Yeah, these totes. You can take as many as you like. Please spread the word. Definitely pull up.
t-shirt.
Definitely pull up our website and see what we're doing. See how you can support us. See what what we're doing in the African community with the kids and with families. And again, this is about us coming together and making sure that we get this work done. And it's going to take all of us. We